There are a lot of myths about wild animals, and over time, an animal that has collected more misconceptions than others is the bat. Many people believe that bats are blind, but Rob Schorr is here to clear things up.
There's this idea that bats are blind is completely a misnomer. There's his eye right there, and he's taking in what he can. He's probably not seeing a heck of a lot with me blinding him with my light here, but they definitely are not blind.
I'm Rob Schorr. I'm a zoologist here at the Colorado Natural Heritage Program, but that title isn't all that descriptive. What I actually do is conservation biology, and I'm a certified wildlife biologist. And I've been working here at CSU in the Colorado Natural Heritage Program for 18 years, mainly studying animals.
So how did you get started working with bats then?
Got started working with bats because it was a species group that I thought would be fascinating to try and study while I was doing my master's work at University of Georgia in the Southeast.
Okay.
And went to a few conferences and got to learn about bats, and just kind of dared myself to develop a project where I got to deal with them, and I had a professor who was pretty flexible and allowing me some time to do that. So I got to do some sampling at the border of Alabama and Georgia for a few different species.
Okay. What was the project on?
The project was one that I created to look at diet of bats. Back then there was kind of a push to try and describe some of the natural history aspects, and we had no idea what some of these bats were eating.
Okay, so I guess besides that, are there any other obstacles to working with bats?
Are there any obstacles to working with that? You say that and I chuckle, because it's an animal that's difficult to capture.
Yeah.
And it's basically only available at night, and they detect their environment in ways that we can't appreciate. We are vision-based organisms. They are hearing-based navigators. They use vision. They're not blind, but their main method of hunting and moving about is all sound-based.
Right.
So they can detect things that we can't appreciate. I've tried to capture them in the past and put up nets and then watch them fly right in front of it and turn around, do circles in front of it and not get captured. So those are just the practical difficulties of capturing. But for us to be able to deal with them, you have to be aware that sometimes they can carry certain diseases that we have to be prepared for, like rabies.
Can you kind of take us through the history of climbers for bat conservation?
Oh, sure.
And why you started that?
We have to get access to where we think bats are roosting. Well, we've had groups go into caves and mines for 20 years trying to find large colonies, and in the West, they're just not as prevalent as they are in the East.
All right.
But that doesn't mean that we think we have fewer bats here. We think that they're roosting in places that we don't get normal access to. And so one of the thoughts was that maybe they're roosting in cracks and crevices along some of the mountainscapes here in Colorado. And lo and behold, started this collaboration called Climbers for Bat Conservation. And what we're trying to do is use climbers as information resources for us to find out where they might stumble upon large colonies of bats.
Okay.
We are getting some climbers reporting. One record was a climber found hundreds of bats in a horizontal crevice near lines, and then last week we had somebody tell us they saw thousands of bats based on the amount of guano in an area near Florissant.
Wow. That's
So
pretty cool.
Fingers crossed, as we might start stumbling upon places we can go back to year and year and film their emergence and get some idea of how many bats we think are there.
The Echo accompanied Climbers for Bat Conservation and Colorado Parks and Wildlife on an educational surveying trip to Devil's Head, Colorado. Here, nets were set up to check for the presence of bats in the area.
We're going to be netting for bats out here at the ponds on the forest, and we've never netted these ponds before, so we're hoping that some bats will come in for us.
Great, and what's the purpose?
Mostly just to get an idea of what bats are in the area. We're also doing some outreach to one of the climbing groups. We're working on getting a bit more connected with the different climbing groups to get bat reports from them when they're up on the rock faces.
Most of the activity is going to happen after dark. They'll get the net set up well before, but then they won't actually put them on until
About a half hour or so.
Yeah.
So this is a male hoary bat. They're one of the larger bats, so they definitely, when you take them out of the net, you can feel how strong they are. So when they're in hand, is they'll make vocalizations that we can hear. It's basically saying, "I don't want you to hold me." Distinguishing characteristics for these guys is, one, they're just a big-bodied bat, but they've got fur all the way down the skin membrane down here, which is the uropatagium. It's the patagium that extends out to the tail. And this salt and pepper fur on the back is real diagnostic, but when you look at them in the face, that yellow rim and that dark muzzle is real characteristic. And these are one of the bats that don't have really large ears. And it's the same group that Tina and Michael were talking about earlier that are migratory. These are tree roosters. What we do have to worry about is usually with these migratory ones is they get so exhausted by holding is that they need some time to rest. So this is another migratory bat, tree roosting bat, but it's a different species. This is a silver-haired bat, and it gets its name for the silver kind of grizzlied appearance. It's a male as well. And it also has hair that comes all the way down the back patagium. So if you can see these knuckles right here, see how it's rounded? If it's smooth and kind of continuous, and you don't see the bone as a solid knot right there, that's how you can tell a yearling. These are fingers, so you're looking at their finger bones. Thumb is here, index is under here, middle's under here, ring, and pinky. So they have much, as you can tell, much elongated finger bones compared to us.
How many prominent bat species are in Colorado?
We estimate around 20, but it is ballpark because
Okay.
I've made specific forays to parts of Colorado to try and document when we think bat species have come in from other states. We have some that have been documented within miles of the border of Colorado. And there's nothing for us to think they haven't flown into Colorado. We would just never know if they did. So 20 is about a pretty good estimate.
So what would you want the public to understand if you could get them to like understand anything?
If there was one message I would want them to come away with any kind of interaction I have is that they're a fascinating group of animals that we don't yet completely appreciate how they move, how they navigate, the life cycles that they go through. It's a group that we have very little appreciation for. And if I could convince them that they're a really exciting group of organisms to understand, is then to let them realize is that we're losing them at an astronomical rate right now. Nowhere in the history of bat conservation in North America has the time been more critical than right now.
Okay.
Over the last 10 years, we've had some pretty dramatic declines in populations.
And I know white nose syndrome is a big part of that, but are there any other, I guess, like big key factors?
The public perception is usually generated around that vision of them being major disease carriers, which is unfortunate. And the other problem is that we do have some unique characteristics that are in the bat world that they have used as diet preferences. Like we have one that just feeds on blood of vampire bats. So that imagery has lent itself well to the horror film industry and people's misconceptions about what they're after.
Yeah, they kind of get a bad rap.
They do. They do.
For people who may not know, why are bats important to the ecosystem and the environment?
There's so many reasons bats are important. Here in Colorado, the biggest reason is they're all insect eaters. So, most of our bats will eat a ton of night-flying insects, moths, mosquitoes, all those things. And so they're really important for that reason. But they're also prey for other animals. When we go to some of our large bat roosts, you'll see owls hanging out at the openings. There'll be other animals that'll go into the roosts to kind of pick bats off when they hit the ground, things like that. So they're kind of right in the middle of the food chain. But they're also just important because they're native species and they've been here for so long and they belong flying around in our evenings.
On the morning after the night of surveying, Rob explains how it went.
The netting effort to try and capture bats went really well, and actually the social aspect of communicating bat biology and conservation to whoever was there went really well too. We were able to catch 3 different species: hoary bat, silver-haired bat, and a western small-footed myotis, and share those with the group there. So we actually got some bat activity, and people got to see bats, which is the whole mission of what we wanted last night.
So what do you think is next for Climbers for Bat Conservation?
The next step for that project is, right now we're still in the data collection and relationship building stage of that, but we were able to recruit an honors undergraduate student here at CSU who wants to start leading groups of student climbers to go to areas where people have reported seeing bats and try and get a better idea of what we think the numbers might be. And at this point, I think we're just going to survey to just get a rough idea of is this a location we could do long-term monitoring at. But we still need to do a lot to spread the word that this organization exists, the collaboration is being developed, and make sure that climbers are comfortable with this kind of data collection, because a lot of that process was relationship development and letting them understand that we just want to find out more about bats in Colorado.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, knowing is half the battle.
Changing the perception, one or two people at a time, is what it takes. Yeah.
My favorite thing is they're the pollinators of agave, which is tequila.
Oh yeah.
So, without bats, we don't have tequila.